So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and Lindsay's on the other end, and she'll continue to let people in. And I was just saying that I was very excited to deliver this lesson tonight. As I think out of all the lessons, if the first lesson was super important for self-care and self-treatment, and certainly the second lesson is still the continuation of the first lesson in theme. This third lesson, however, I think has the potential to really impact your life in a larger sense that you have yet to discover. And it's that profound. It really is. And so I'm going to break it down for you, and in such a way that it is usable and reproducible, that you can repeat it. So it allows you to continue in this method of, which I think is called self-care or self-treatment. So tonight's lesson is going to take place on the floor, or it can be in a recliner chair, as long as the recliner goes all the way back. It could also be on a massage table. There'll be a portion of this that will be done in a sitting position. Now, you're free to sit on the floor to do that, but also sitting in a chair would be another experience for you as well. So you might want to have that available to you. And here's the catch. Not all of you are going to go through the different positions that we're going to be in, like lying on your back, lying on your belly, in the sitting position, in the standing position, and bending forward. So it means that not all of you have to go through all these positions. You may find that what we do on the floor will be just perfect for you and so profound that you will want to stay there, and that's okay too. This is for later on when you go to repeat the lesson again, that you can then build upon it and reach another level for yourself, okay? So there was one other thing that I wanted to say, that these lessons, even though this is the third lesson, this is not the third lesson in the Esalen series. So at the end of the series, I have prepared for you a PDF document that lists the names of the lessons that we're doing, and I have to rename them. I can't keep the same Esalen name. But what I did is I also kind of matched what that original lesson was. So you can see, like, my number 3 lesson tonight is really actually number lesson 13 in the Esalen series. So I am picking and choosing these with a great deal of meditation, if you will, or consternation. These are not just randomly, oh, I think I'll do number 13. There's a progression I'm going for. And so tonight's lesson, I've renamed it as Moving with a Purpose. And this moving with a purpose, it has a colon and it says it's about getting your head on straight. And it's not just your physical anatomical head, but also getting your thinking and your mind. We're really going to expand something that for some of you will be like, seriously, never even knew that. And so, as you know, we've been going with the lollipop and tire theme, and how our arms, our lollipops influence that central or vertical line, which is just nothing more than a stack of wheels or tires, if you will. Our last week's lesson looked at lifting the pelvis or bridging and influencing how we moved our pelvis side to side, which is really our center of mass over our base of support. And we started to really find these articulation and changes in the thoracic spine. But we stopped there at the thoracic spine. Tonight's lesson is going to go high. It's going to look at the cervical, all right? And I dare say this is probably a lesson that explores all too common and perhaps the most dysfunctional relationship that we all have. All right. So we're all in this together. And is this dysfunctional relationship in the cervical spine that has to do with something called the upper cervical spine and the lower cervical spine. Okay. So tonight's lesson is going to focus and see what we can do to change this dysfunctional relationship. So I want to share with you just a really quick visual because this will be new for some, because what you're about to see is a, a really, my intention here in hope is to really call forward this upper cervical spine versus the lower cervical spine. Upper refers to these top two vertebrae and how the head sits on this first vertebra. But the lower cervical spine is C3 through C7. Now, there should be this kind of qualitative proportional flexibility. That means that no area in here is working harder than any other area. And so what happens is the most disturbing thing is that this lower cervical spine begins at most to be disturbed for most of us. But I would say for a fair number of people is that how this spine was supposed to move is probably lost or has been unavailable for a long time. And so what that means is that here in this upper cervical spine, it takes on that full responsibility of rotating the head. And your upper cervical spine was meant to turn the head, not necessarily rotate it. And what happens is this lower cervical spine, oh my goodness, it starts to behave, and functionally it acts like a group of thoracic vertebrae that have ribs on it. They stop their movement at certain levels. And so what we want to do is tonight's lesson is trying to find, utilizing our self-care strategy, of course, of being able to move through an arc, all right, an arc of motion that or range that's smooth, that's easy. And tonight it's important to be painless, all right, so that we start to discover that there's a real art in how our head moves. And this concept of rolling can start to really unlock, return, restore, call back this lower cervical spine's potential for rotation. So that way, the things that we do in our daily life, like the things that require our balance, like climbing stairs, turning around, driving, all those things start to have more restorative value for us. So that's what we're going for tonight. Okay. So let's do a couple of reference tests just to see where you're at right now. And then we'll check them again at the end of the lesson. Okay. So the first one is you are sitting. And I want you to sit unsupported. So if you're in your chair, that means scoot to the forward edge of your chair. And if you're sitting on the floor, you're already in unsupported sitting. Okay, good. And I want you to just observe the quality of your head and neck moving as you slowly turn to look over the right shoulder. And I want you to look as though that you were seeing some items in that room. Okay. Good. And then you come back to the forward position. And then once again, take a look at it turning to the left. I'm just starting to spotlight some people here. Seeing the things on that side of the room. And so you're starting to get a baseline. You're starting to establish what does my arc of ease feel like? Where is it, right? Try not to let yourself be seduced in seeing how far you can go and make it more about, okay, there I am. All right. All right. Good. Now, come to standing. And I would like you to do the same thing. So you're standing, both feet. And then as the head starts to look over to the right, are you someone that is the head turning? Is the shoulders turning? Do you feel the pelvis start to turn? So those are all examples of possibilities of turning and looking behind you, right? Those are other lessons that we do in somatic education to increase the potential of the whole vertical cardinal line. But tonight's lesson, what is it? If you didn't really let the shoulders or the pelvis turn, what's your potential of letting the face, the skull, like a ball, roll to the right, returning back to the center, and then back to the left? hmm And for many of us, it's very hard to differentiate in standing. It's like everything wants to turn. It's like, okay. All right, head back to the forward position. Now, I want you just to bend forward as though that you were going to allow your fingers to touch the ground just to see what that ease is like for you. And you can let the arms hang, you can let the knees bend. It's no trick here. It's just the ease of bending forward. Good. And then you come back up. hmm Nice. And then you can try that one more time again. So we're just kind of getting a sense of what movement feels like. Where are my stuck places? Where does it feel free? And then come to standing again. Now, this next time, you're going to walk about maybe 10 or 15 feet, whatever it is in the place where you're at. You're going to walk forward, you're going to turn around, and then you're going to walk back. All right? So let yourself do that. Make sure that's all okay. hmm hmm Good. All right. Now come back. Now you're going to do this again. And I'm going to give you a cue, or I guess it's a command actually. I'm going to say head right, or I could say head left. And I will just say those four words again: head left, head right, head left, head right. But don't turn the head until you hear me say it. And your job is to continue to walk along and then head turn right, not your body turning. So we want to see what happens with head turning. So you're going to pace down and back. And I'll say head right. And you look over that right shoulder. There you go. But do you stop or could you keep going? Mm. So all the time you are walking and I say head left. And notice if and then you bring the head back to midline and then you continue walking. And notice that when I say head right, mhm, head right, do you feel like you list to one side? And then you turn it right back. And then the last time, walking forward and head left. So though that you're turning to have a conversation with someone on your left side, and then you look forward again. Okay, fantastic. Good. Now, come back to the room, our Zoom room. Mhm. Now, I'm also going to pin myself. And so, like I said, tonight's lesson, we are going to do two just hand positions. And this first one is a sweet hand position. And it's like I'm going to cup my hand. I'm going to cup my hand as though that I could bring water up to my mouth. That's what I call cupping. All right. We can all do that, right? And we could cup with the other hand, right? Good. Fantastic. Here's the second position. So we're going to, instead of cupping, we're going to actually extend our hand long. So if you were looking at your hand, it would be like the fingers extend out from the back of the hand, from the palm, from the wrist, and the forearm, as opposed to cupping is more of a rounded. And this one is where the palm is long, the hand is long. Does that make sense? And you see these strange little lines on my hand. Oh, look at my palm. I've done something to my palm to help you out. Now, if you look down at your palm, can you see that there is a midline? There's a middle of your palm when you compare the root of your fingers to the heel of your palm. Do you see that surface area in here? Mm-hmm. Yes. Let me pin myself so that you can see this a little bit clearly. Sorry about that. There you go. That's a in your face kind of a moment there. So there's clearly a middle, there's clearly a heel, and there's also the root of the fingers or the other end of the palm, three different sections. And so we'll be tracking movement across the palm here. Now, some of you have shoulder issues. All right. I know this straight up. We've worked together. And sometimes when we go to place this palm, we're going to be placing this palm in such a way that we are going to put it, this is the middle of your forehead. Now, some people get confused on what the middle of the forehead, but if you know where your bridge of your nose is, there's where the middle of your forehead is. If you put the middle of your palm on the middle of your forehead, it looks like that. So we can have the hand or the fingers long, or the palm long, or we could cup. That's right. We could cup our hand as though that we were checking for a fever. All right. So those are those two positions. Now, for some of you, if I really can't get my hand on my forehead, it hurts my shoulder. It is okay if you think of, I'm going to use that same illustration on the back of my hand. I have a midline, I have the root, and I have down here by my wrist. So I could put the middle of the back of my hand on the midline of my skull, and I'll be tracking movement that goes along this hand. All right. Now, this looks easy right now, but when you start to lie in your back, things start to take on a different image. Okay. So it's really important that in the shoulder girdle, which is your arm and your collarbone and your shoulder blade, the elbow will be doing different things. So we want some comfort. All right. Self-care. Beautiful. That's all we're going to be doing tonight. That seems pretty simple, right? So now come to lie on your back. And if you have glasses on, you probably want to go ahead and take those off. And if you don't want your video feed on, so that I can spot some people, then certainly just turn that off. That'll just help me out on my recording. Thank you so much. Mhm. So in tonight's lesson, here's another choice that you get to experience as you lie there on your back. Immediately, you can start to sense those 5 cardinal lines, the 2 leg lines with the lollipop, with the ball at the top moving into the pelvis, influencing the vertical cardinal line, all the way up to the top of the vertical cardinal line is actually your ball, the other ball that sits up there. And the 2 cardinal lines of the arms that their lollipops connect to that vertical line through the shoulder girdle. Mhm. In tonight's lesson, you actually get to choose how you want your feet. They can be long. You can have one knee bent. You can have both knees bent. And you can change throughout the whole lesson anytime you'd like, as well as at any time you like, you could roll over onto your side and just rest. Mhm. Now, begin to sense the weight of the skull on the floor, the back of the skull, and start to let it give you some information about the width of the skull. And you can start to imagine that there's a middle point, a midline in the skull that divides the skull a little bit on the right side and a little bit on the left side. Mhm. Tonight's lesson is a slow lesson. It's not a lazy lesson because it requires great attentiveness, but it is slow. Slow enough that you can also start to track the inhale and the exhale, the rhythm of your breath. And now we're going to be taking the left hand and we're going to place the left hand in the cupped position. We're going to put the hand in the midline of the forehead, the midline of the forehead, as though that you were checking for a fever. That's right. And begin to initiate this movement. Oh, I'm going to let see what you do. I want you to let the forehead turn to the right. And then when you get to a certain place that feels iffy or non-easy, then draw the face back toward the beginning. So the face is turning to the right and turning to the left. So I like to ask a question. Does your head drive that movement? In other words, as you turn your head, are you is the hand coming along with the head? Mhm. You could certainly do that, right? The initiator, the driver says, "I'm in control here. I can do that." And then the next time you come back toward that beginning place or we'll call it the midline again, pause. And this time, really start to track that your left hand is going to move the forehead. The left hand moves the forehead, it stays cupped, it moves. And so now you start to feel this turning in the head being driven by the hand, of course, the elbows moving and the forearm and the shoulder. And then you start to return back, reverse the direction, and now let the cupped left hand start to pull the forehead to the left. The hand driving this motion. The elbow starts to hang out a little bit. Mhm. And then once you get to a certain comfort, certain ease, finding that limit, then you reverse it. And the reverse here is that the hand is now pushing that forehead and carrying it across the midline and carrying it to the right. So you're doing this slow motion back and forth. And the movement, because it's slow, it allows for you to include in your awareness the back of the skull, back of the midline of the skull. And feel how the contact of the skull moving on the floor is more or less around its midline, just a skosh off to the right and a little bit off to the left as the hand in front starts to roll the head. Good. And then the next time you find yourself with the forehead in the middle, let that go and let your hand just rest by your side. This was the left hand, the cupped left hand on the middle of the forehead, initiating the movement of the head. And once again, just a reminder that you can do anything you want with your lower extremities, the change in angle of your knees, the width, whatever's good for you. And now bring that right cupped hand. Let's cup the hand and bring it to the middle of the forehead. Mhm. And so begin this repeat of the same movement, hand staying in contact with the forehead, the whole palm. And you begin to push the head so that the head starts to move or face moves in the direction to the left. And finding that arc, finding that sweet range where, yes, there it is on my left. It's very different on this side. Seems like I can go a little further here. Oop, I'm going to back off there. And then I'm going to reverse the movement, reverse, allowing the hand to pull the forehead to the right. And you start to notice that as you get to the end ranges of these movements, perhaps the chin starts to dip down a little bit closer to the collarbone when you get to the end of your range. For some of that, it would be quite evident, might be evident on one side more than the other. Mhm. And you can sense the back of the skull, the midline of the skull, just a little off to the right, just a little off to the left. Love how you're attending to the breath in the background. And you can also start to get a sense that, oh my, your your teeth seem a little bit further apart here. Face a little bit more relaxed. And the next time you find yourself in the middle, you can release your hand from your head, lay it on the floor. You can already begin to sense the quality of quietness that starts to come over you. As I see this as people lying, although still, but quite active. And so we can begin to start to ask this question: what's the difference between turning, rolling, and rotation? Hmm. And now we're going to come to our second hand posture, that hand posture of where the palm is no longer cupped, the palm is long. And we are very clear that the length of the palm has a very prescriptive middle. It has an end near the heel of the hand or the wrist, and it has an end near the root of the fingers. Can you begin to put your left long palm, the middle of the palm, on the middle of your forehead? There. So the thumb itself is connected to the rest of the hand, and the thumb is not resting on the skull. It's connected to your fingers. That's right. And your elbow more or less is out to the side. Let's just see if it's possible with your wrist. If not, I gave you another option. You could put the back of your hand, the middle of the back of the hand on the forehead. That would work too. And I want you to begin to still initiating the head rolling with the left hand. Can you begin to roll the middle of the palm, carrying the face to the right? And you'll start to notice that the forehead moves from the middle of the palm more towards the heel or the wrist part of the palm as you make that motion. And then you'll get to a certain level of arc of turn, and then you'll reverse the motion. So you can feel the forehead being dragged across using the heel, and then all of a sudden you'll move into the middle part of your palm. And then if you keep coming, you'll move from the middle part of the palm, turning the head, to as the face turns to the left, that's right, the root of the fingers of the palm are there. And you carry the forehead with this long palm, flat, rolling either the back of the hand or the back of the palm. And you start to notice that as you track the hand moving the skull, you're also moving to a different place on the skull, aren't you? Yeah. If the heel of your palm is on the skull, it's more toward the left eye. But if the root of your hand near the fingers, all of a sudden those are near the right eye. And then, of course, as the middle of the palm makes connection to the middle, that's right. Good. And the next time you come to the middle, pause there, lower your hand. Beautiful. And feel how that movement there is so different than the cupping. Now, let's see about the right hand coming up to the middle of the palm, making connection with your midline of the forehead. That's right. The fingers are long, the thumb is attached, and there's no thumb on the head. And once again, begin to initiate and track the movement of the palm or the back of the hand, whichever you have chosen. That's right. So that the hand itself is the initiator of the movement. And there's this push and pulling, it looks like, of the head, but it's actually the result of the palm or the back of the hand traveling across. And you can now start to feel the midpoint of the skull that's laying on the floor starts to have a different response, very different than cupping. And the next time you come to the middle, release your hand. Mhm. So You can change over how you are posturing your legs in any position you want. I'll just keep reminding you of that. And this time we're going to bring the middle of the left hand. We're going to still stay with our long palm. So we're going to bring the middle of the left hand to the mid forehead and the middle of the right palm to the back of the skull, the midline of the back of the skull. So it's like we're making a head sandwich and our thumbs are connected to one another. Mhm. Excuse me, they're not connected to one another. They're connected to the hands. The palms are long. And now I'm still looking for this easy and smooth relationship of maybe simultaneously starting to move the midpoint of the palms across the forehead, and the other one across the back of the head, allowing the face to be carried to the right and then carrying to the left. And so for some of us, when we start to put our hand behind the back of our head, we forget that the hand on the floor is just like the hand that's on the forehead. So as the midpoint of the palm on the floor starts to move, you actually feel the back of your hand start to slide across the floor, back and forth across the floor. And that's what changes the back of the skull moving toward the mid palm, the root of the palm, the heel of the palm. And it's interesting how these two hands are actually simultaneously moving and both will be at the heel of the hand and then they both end up at the midpoint. And then they both, in the turning, the rolling of the ball, if you will, end up at the root. So there's a timing going on with the top hand and the bottom hand. And then next time you find yourself in the middle, release your hand from the ball of your head. When we start to use two hands like this, it's very easy to want to start to achieve something here, to achieve letting the ball roll more to the right or more to the left. But can you sense that in yourself that you can start to pay attention and to have a little bit more compassion for yourself as we change over our hands and putting the right hand on our forehead and the left hand, the middle of the left hand on the back of our skull. So have a little, really some sweet compassion that says, you know, there's nothing to achieve here except for this tracking to my capacity of feeling my long palm take up residence and move across my forehead and the back of the skull. And can you give yourself permission to stop short of the end of that range before it starts to tweak or become non-easy or maybe even painful? Mhm. So notice how that different part of the palm, the heel, the middle, the root, comes into a contact with a different part of the forehead. Mhm. So it's really like a wheel rolling, the elbows hanging out to the side. You can even feel the root of the arms there at your collarbone, near your base of your throat, starting to have a little more availability. Good. And then let that go. And now we're going to take that quality of rolling, the long palm rolling, feeling how a different part of our palm comes into contact with a different part of our forehead or a different part of the back of our skull. And we're going to do this now in different positions. So, this first position I want to explore, if it's available to you, is to lie on your front, on your stomach. And if it's possible for you to put the palm, the middle part of the palm on your forehead, do that. For some of you, you may not have that wrist or shoulder available. So then it's okay to put the palm down. And so you're going to track the movement of the forehead with the back of the palm. And of course, bring your other hand, your left hand, to behind your head. Mhm. And can you lift your elbow a little bit from the floor, the one that's behind the head, so that you still have that kind of a quality? And notice what it's like. You can, which one were you going to start to move first? Are you going to start to move the mid palm of the forehead or the mid palm of the skull? Is there going to be a pull or is there going to be a push, right? A push is going to take you in one direction, and a pull of the palm across the forehead, that's it, or across the skull takes you into another. Good. Interesting how fatiguing this one is. Good. Now pause. Lie there, release your hands. Now, we're going to come back to that same position. It's in your choice. You can either have the right hand in front, forehead, left hand on the skull. Your choice. Whichever hand is on the, there you go, on the back of the skull. There you go. Now, could you lift your both elbows just a skosh and your forehead away from, so as though that whole area is floated off of the floor, and begin that long palm rolling. You won't be able to do it for very long. It's fine, but just get a sense of what it is, because we're going to compare that to something good. All right, good. Phew. Come back to the center, let that go. We're almost done here. Now, I want to compare that to something we did originally with the cup, the cupping of the palm. So let your right hand grab a hold of the forehead and your left hand grab a hold. And so you're holding it like we're checking a fever front and back. All right. And if you begin to lift your torso away, excuse me, lift your head away, and then start to turn with this cupping, rolling the head, you can start to feel that the torso actually starts to move, gets into the picture. And for some of you, it can be quite a great effort. This is a very different move than a flat, long palm making the roll. Good. Let it go. And then come to lie and roll onto your side for a moment. So we've been tracking different areas of our palm, moving on different areas of our ball, our skull. And for once, we're really giving our muscles of our neck a break. Instead of having the head make the movement, we're carrying the head. We're allowing the head to be passive. to come along for a ride. And then now turn and lie on your back for a moment with your knees bent. And so we're really asking ourselves, can we let go of how we typically use ourselves and trying to allow this passively caring of the head without trying to assist or interfere? Because now we're going to come up, to rise up from the floor. And in rising up, we're going to be sitting, and you have a choice. You can sit there on the floor if you like, or even a chair. A chair would be just fine. So you get to choose, because we're going to do some of this long palm rolling. These different positions that you are sitting in, whether you are on your knees kneeling or cross-legged like in Indian style, or sitting in a chair, offer a very different quality. So I invite you to choose what's available to you now, but also to play with on the repeat some different positions with sitting. And so begin to take the middle of the right palm, that mid place of the right palm, and put it behind your skull, the middle part of your skull, and bring your left hand to the midpoint. And so your elbows more or less here are really hanging out to the side, are they not? To the sides of the room, if you will. And from this place here, you can keep your eyes closed. You know what we're going to do. It's that same quality of long palm rolling, not cupping. So you are initiating this move either from the hand in front or the hand in back. Or could you find this simultaneously initiation? And if you find that your elbows are turning more towards the front, you find a lot of turning with your elbows, could there be less movement of this rotation of the elbow, like towards the front of the room and towards the back? But they actually, that's much better. That's much better. They stay hanging out to the side. That's right. Good. As though that now that you're in this upright position, you don't have as much sensory feedback, do you? It's very, can be very distorting. The next time you find yourself in the middle, then pause and let your hands rest. So staying attuned to the breath, committed to going slow enough that you can feel and hear and experiencing your breath in the background. You can experience and feel the tracking of your palms, those three areas of your palms. And you can really sense that's a ball rolling in between my hands. So switch over your hands so that whatever was in back is now in front, and what it was in front is now in back. The fingers are long, the thumb connected to the index finger, not resting on your head at all. And once again, if you're having problems with your shoulders, it is okay to turn the back of your hand onto your forehead. That might be helpful for some people. So the elbows are out to the sides of the room, and simultaneously start to move the palms or the back of the hands from the midline to the root of the heel and then to the root of the fingers. There's this synchronization that happens here. So often we get enamored with trying to strengthen our neck muscles that we forget about the most important thing. And Feldenkrais knew this. It's motor control, it's timing, it's synchronization. And you know when to stop the rolling. You know when to pause in the middle and bring your hands down. You're starting to get familiar with, that's my cue. I'm listening to myself. I'm becoming more respectful of this vehicle, this place, this me. Mm-hmm. Good. And if you always start with the reference of the mid palm of each hand in the mid line of the forehead and the skull, you'll do very well. You'll do very well. Now, come to standing. Let's see what it's like if we change the base of support. You see what's happening is that we're really demanding for ourselves this smaller and smaller base of support. And so from this standing position, once again, we are bringing our hands to our head, forehead, and skull like we've done, long palm. And begin this rolling from this perspective. Mm-hmm. And more or less, those elbows stay wide. The next time you come to the center, change over your hands, or you could pause first. And I like to let my hands be down at my side and then I start again because it's like I need to refresh myself. I'm not used to experiencing a reference point of the palm of my hand, the three areas, the three levels that start to map out and allow this ball to be rolled between the two hands. When the palm is long, it's very different than actually a cupping movement. In fact, the next time you come to the center, pause and let your hands be down at your side. And let's see what it would be like to cup the palm on the forehead and cup the back of the skull. So now we're holding it in between our hands. And this time, if we take our cupped hands on the skull and we start to move the skull, drag it to one side, we can start to see that your elbows literally do start to turn. It's as though the torso starts to turn and the hand that's on the back begins to come to the forward place of the room. And if I turn in the direction towards the pushing hand or the hand that's in front, the elbows start to move around forward and back to the room, as opposed to a cupping hand doing that motion, as opposed to or compared to a long palm. Now be long palm, and you'll see that really now the elbows can stay a little bit more out. Mhm. And it's like the throat, even now, the throat feels a little bit more free. And now you understand what I mean about elbows more out to the side rather than the elbows turning around. Good. Now, pause for a moment and just walk in your room. Let your arms be down at your side and just let yourself walk and just notice if that's different for you. And if I say head right, you look over right, keep walking, and you return the head. Keep walking, Head left. Return the head. Keep walking. Head right. Head left. Mm, good. Now, let that go. Come to standing one more time. And for those of you who feel like, wow, this is a lot for me, I think I'm just going to let that go. I feel like I would really like to sit. You can do this next thing in sitting. So it's your choice, sitting or standing. So we're going to do long palm again, and we're going to do long palm rolling the head. Okay. And this time, as we do long palm rolling the head, we're going to start to actually lower or bend forward. Okay. So you have to go slow with this. You're going to have to be committed to going slow. So the middle of the palm on the forehead, the middle of the palm long on the back of the skull. You will begin that qualitative, incredible movement first. Before you bend forward, Madeline, can you start the motion of the head rolling? So the head rolling is prime in the movement. Go slower, Robin, as you start to bend forward and lean forward. Just lean over. And you start to get a sense that as you start to bend forward with this head rolling, you feel like a little discombobulated, don't you? It's like, what happened there? So give yourself that permission to start again. So maybe you only go half as much in the motion of bending forward, but could you be committed to that smooth arc of rolling? Mm-hmm. So that the arc of rolling the ball between the hands does not change just because the position of yourself is moving from upright to over and coming down towards the ground. And notice how it gets sticky for us. Eventually for you, as you repeat this lesson and you begin to have the restoration of this lower cervical spine come back, you'll be free enough to have this bending, whether it's standing or sitting, and it will come back to you. Good. And you don't bend forward. You won't have to bend forward with your face in one direction and then you come back up and the face turns the other way. It's like there's no stopping of the rolling, Leslie. And it's smaller than that. Yes, that's better. And you're committed to the freedom, much better. Nice. The next time you come to the upright, you can let your hands go. Now, if you have a chair by you, I'd like for you to sit in the chair. And you're sitting unsupported. But I'd like you to cross your legs at the ankle. Crossing your legs at the ankle. And it matters not which one is in front. And once again, let's go with the long palm, your choice, whichever one, right hand in front, left hand, doesn't matter. The elbows are out to the side. I really appreciate how some of you are going with the back of the hand so that it becomes available in the shoulder girdle. But you're staying committed to there's a midpoint of the back of the hand and there's a root towards the fingers and there's definitely the heel of the back of the hand. So allow yourself to slouch a little bit. As you start to slouch, the elbows still stay wide, but you can have this rolling and allow yourself to fold forward. Just somewhere that's comfortable for you, but you can still be committed to this sweet rolling. Be dedicated to track one aspect of the palm, either the forward or the back one. It's okay. So new having this kind of quality of reference. And the elbows still kind of hang out more toward the side, Heather. Just because you're bending forward doesn't mean that the hand in front drops the elbow. Yeah, very different for a shoulder of that nature. Good. And then allow yourself to come back up to the upright. Good. Uncross your legs, feet on the floor. You might sense that there was this rush of air that came in through the nostrils. We forget how much holding there can be when we do motions like this up against gravity and against a different base of support. But also that inhale that rushes in can also start to signal that the sympathetic portion of your autonomic nervous system starts to let go. And you're sitting there and begin to imagine that your hands are on your head and begin to roll your head to the right. Good. Roll as though you're going to the right. Feel the roll, the easy roll. And you'll come back to the center. And then you'll go to the left. And there's a letting go of the shoulders and almost sinking into the thoracic spine as you roll the head, allowing the lower cervical spine to start to participate. Very good. That's it, Heather. To participate in this motion. To return its role so that your upper cervical spine says, oh, thank God, I can be responsible for balance now. Oh, thank God, maybe I can let go some of this ringing of the ear. Maybe I can let go of some of these old vestibular dizzy issues. Ah, yes, good. And the next time you come to the center, pause. Good. You see, when we begin to bring back for ourselves, when we begin to bring back the potential of this lower cervical spine, that it is designed architecturally to really sweetly know how to turn and rotate and side bend. And it does so because it is responsible for carrying the head over, the whole mass over to one side. So then the upper cervical spine, which is brilliantly designed for turning, and turning is not rotation. They're two different things. And so now we begin to really open a opportunity, a door for you to start to experience that. Oh, go figure. That's just not a big old space between the bottom of my head and the top of my shoulders. There's something seriously going on there. There's something seriously starting to wake up, even in the front of the throat, that can be more available. So that driving, balance, climbing, stairs, stepping becomes more available. Good. That's it. There you go. Now, that is the end of that lesson. And if you're in that quiet place, let yourself stay there. Let yourself stay there. And if you feel like, wow, I feel like I have strained some part of myself that I wasn't used to, then you'll go back and you'll lie on your back and you'll start with cupping. Cupping the palm to roll the head. That's more of the upper cervical. But the long palm of rolling the head, that starts to change the tone in the throat, the small muscles in the neck, into the thoracic spine. This, for some of you, you have not reached the potential yet of this upper girdle. This is a lesson in differentiating your ribs from your upper girdle. Okay, so go back to cupping and then go back to feeling as much support on the ground as possible when you do this. And you'll reset again. Okay. We have about 5 minutes. And so if you have a question, I'm going to have you look down at your reactions, and there's a place where you can raise your hand. And we'll start first with Ellen. Mm-hmm.
Yes, Carol, my question is, could you demonstrate the difference between turning and rotation? Like on your own neck? Like I'm not, I don't have that completely distinguished in my mind.
Sure. I'm going to see if I can pin myself. I don't know if I'm big or not, but it will be on the video. Okay. So here I'm going to go with a cupping. And so as I start to cup, and my hands don't move across my forehead, but I'm initiating this movement with my hands, you can start to see that actually my torso is actually doing a lot of this movement. And you can see that my elbow points towards the screen. I'm pulling with my hand in front or pulling with my hand in the rear simultaneously. One is pushing, one is pulling, but this is cupping. Okay. Now, if I am standing up, but if I were lying down, all right, cupping would look like this. I'm going to pretend that I'm laying on my back. This is cupping.
90 degrees here. Your upper body stays one piece and you hinge at the hips.
Okay. My chin drops down as opposed to rolling. Okay. Excuse me. As opposed to of long palm. So here's my long palm, mid skull, mid forearm, fingers long. Notice how my elbows stay out to the side as I do this motion. And as I'm doing the motion, simultaneously, both of my palms, I'm at the root or the fingers of my palms, coming to the midpoint of my palm, coming to now the heel of my palm. And that's rotation. Okay. That's rolling. I'm rolling the head. And in rolling the head, rolling the head versus cupping, rolling the head can give way, can start to inform rotation back in this lower cervical. And we think of lower cervical as only being like down here in this area by C7. But really, that lower cervical is C3 through C7. It's quite a distance. Helpful? Okay. And Ingrid?
So thank you for that lesson. I noticed that when we came to sitting or standing, that it was a lot harder for me, and because my eyes were open. And I noticed just now when you were demonstrating with your eyes closed, and that's what I had when I was on the floor. And so I'm intrigued now about the role of the eyes, because when you have us walking and you say, you know, look right, look left, well, the eyes are active, and that just seems like right now for me, that feels like some next frontier or something. So how the eyes will integrate with all of this. I mean, obviously I've been walking in the world, but somehow that feels like there's something there to bring together into something harmonious that maybe hasn't been happening.
That's exactly right. Your eyes play a very important role in the organization of the upper cervical spine. Okay, the higher cervical spine. They're very, very much linked. And so for every amount of rotation that you are turning, the eyes either can turn that direction or they can move simultaneously the opposite direction. They have that ability. So when we do a lesson like we just did, I probably would encourage you to keep the eyes closed so that the eyes don't get distracted by what is moving. But I got to tell you, if you want to kick it up a notch, and provided that you can actually have this kind of quality, I'm going to pin myself again so you can see this, so that you can still have this kind of quality. I never lose this quality of rotation. I never. I'm committed to it. That's as far as I can go here on this one. I'm committed. And the hand in front always carries a little further in one direction than the hand that's in the rear. Okay. So I'm committed to this. Then you can start to play with what you want to do with the eyes. Either stay focused, or I could there's so many different things you could do.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
thank you.
And that's one aspect of rolling the head. There's another aspect of rolling the head. It's still rolling the head, but you have a different hand position on the head. And this lesson goes into that a little bit more. But it was so important for me to get this connection of a front to back rolling, because it plays it plays a bigger role, and it's more successful for people who aren't Feldenkrais or somatic movement savvy. And we have a fair number of people who are newbies and beginners, and these lessons are available to all of us and can be, and I want that to be. And yet I want it to also be a little challenging, a little sneak peek of, could you go a little further in your learning and your image of who you are? Because we all can improve. And that's what Feldenkrais was saying, right? We all have that capacity. So good question. Yes, Mila?
Yeah, Carol, when you do the long palms, I don't see your palms really sliding across the forehead, do they?
They absolutely do not slide
they
across the
don't.
forehead, right?
Ah,
They have to carry. Well, let's if we all do that, if they're just sliding, then my forehead, my head just stays. If I'm sliding my long palm across, I just stay. Ah, there you go, Mila. But if you
okay.
begin to let the palm move across the forehead, it's that sections of the palm have to move.
Okay, I got
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Because if not, it's called cupping.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
called turning. And for most of
Okay.
us, we actually overturn. We actually overuse our upper cervical more than we actually really need to. Very
Hmm.
lovely distinction. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
bet. You bet. And one more? Or do you feel sated? Fantastic. Good deal. All right. So thank you again, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday, and hope you have a lovely, lovely week. All right.
Thank you very much, Carol. See you next week.